I got another one of those emails from some woman asking sort of like to get to know us for the purpose of joining the family.
Pour yourself a drink and get comfortable, because what I'm about to tell you will hit a nerve with anyone who's ever tried to keep a household afloat while someone else made reckless, self-centered money choices. Picture this. You're winding down for the night, maybe scrolling through your favorite shows while folding laundry or packing lunches for tomorrow, when the Sister Wives Season 20 trailer pops up in your feed. The usual chaos plays out: family tension, awkward exchanges, and Kody's over-the-top antics we've all come to expect. But then, sharp-eyed fans start hitting pause and rewind on one particular scene. And there it is, taking up a huge chunk of wall space in the now-famous McMansion 2.0, a jaw-dropping display of romantic indulgence. We're talking about a massive oil painting, and I mean massive. The subject? None other than Kody and Robyn, captured in that notorious white Lexus engagement photo shoot. You know the one, the sunset kiss pose Christine openly criticized during the season 19 tell-all for being far too intimate for an engagement shot. Here's where your blood pressure might spike. This isn't some private keepsake tucked away in a bedroom or hallway. No, this oversized love shrine is front and center in what looks like a main living space, positioned like it's the crown jewel of their decor. Kody has literally put his obsession with Robyn on display for millions of viewers to see. Now, you might be thinking, all right, couples commission art all the time. What's the big deal? Well, here's the gut punch. It's about what's not on that wall. While this romantic tribute gets pride of place in their million-dollar home, sources say Garrison's memorial photo, honoring Kody's son, who tragically passed away, is sitting in their garage. Let that sink in. A $5,000 romantic painting is showcased on national TV, while his late son's memory is relegated to the space where they park their cars. Naturally, the internet went into overdrive. Within hours of the trailer dropping, fans were screenshotting, comparing past episodes and digging into the backstory. What they uncovered was a case study in misplaced priorities that would break any parent's heart. That painting, which had been spotted in the background of earlier footage, was now impossible to ignore. And Kody made sure of it. The message he's sending is loud and clear. His relationship with Robyn comes before honoring his children, even in death. One viral comment summed it up perfectly. Imagine being so self-absorbed that you turn your engagement photo into wall art while your son's memorial sits in the garage. But this was only the beginning. The moment the trailer hit the internet, the Sister Wives fan base turned into a full-blown investigative team. And when a group of determined women with decades of life experience start digging, they don't stop. Within hours, they were pulling up old episodes, cross-checking footage, and combing through social media. The big questions: who painted this? When was it commissioned? And how much did it cost? The trail led straight to Kody Brown Fine Art, an Arizona-based artist whose website suddenly became the most scrutinized portfolio online. And here's what fans found. This wasn't just a casual commission. Kody calls the piece Love Psalm, a 36 by 72-inch oil painting on linen, and the largest, most expensive work she's ever created. According to her own account, the project took months. She worked while playing music from Kody and Robyn's courtship, crafting what she described as a legacy painting to capture their love story. The detail and effort were undeniable. This was a serious artistic undertaking. And here's the kicker. Kody revealed Kody commissioned it as an anniversary surprise for Robyn. He brought her to the studio under the guise of picking out a painting, walked her through a small art display, and then revealed the massive tribute. The artist even described feeling the ancestors and a sense of sacredness while creating it. But here's the reality check for anyone who's ever managed a budget. Grand romantic gestures that cost thousands, especially when they're meant for public display, often say more about image than genuine sentiment. Based on Kody's other listed prices, online sleuths estimate Kody paid around $5,000 for this painting, a painting based on a photo already controversial within his own family, now immortalized in oil and hung for the world to see. And the timing? While Kody was spending months and thousands on this romantic shrine, his family was enduring unimaginable loss. The contrast between the effort and money poured into celebrating Robyn versus honoring his late son is enough to leave people speechless. Social media went into overdrive. Facebook fan groups for the show started posting side-by-side images. Reddit threads ran for hundreds of comments. The pattern was obvious, and it hit hard. One comment in particular summed up the mood. As a mother who's lost a child, seeing pricey romantic art take pride of place while a son's memorial photo sits in the garage makes me physically sick. This man has completely lost sight of what matters. But the digging had only just begun, because once you start pulling at a thread like this, the whole thing starts to unravel. And here's where the story turns from frustrating to heartbreaking, the kind of detail that makes you question basic human decency. While online sleuths were busy figuring out the price tag on Kody's grand romantic gesture, other viewers were rewatching old episodes with a new perspective, looking for signs of where the family's priorities really lay and how grief was being handled in the Brown household. What they spotted in the background of earlier seasons was so stark, so painful, it left the sister wives community stunned. Picture this clearly. In past footage from Inside McMansion 2.0, eagle-eyed viewers noticed something tucked away in what looked like the garage. Garrison's memorial photo from his funeral. Not in a living room, not in a place of honor where family and guests would naturally see it. Instead, it was sitting in the same space where cars are parked and holiday decorations are stored. Let that image settle in. A memorial to a young man who served his country, who had his whole life ahead of him, who was loved and mourned by family and community, sitting in a garage. Meanwhile, a romantic painting celebrating a controversial engagement photo is given prime wall space in the main living area. The side-by-side comparison that began circulating online was gut-wrenching. On one side, a huge, expensive oil painting of romantic love, perfectly lit, dominating a formal living space. On the other, a funeral photo of a son, hidden away where no one would see it unless they were looking for lawn tools or storage boxes. Every mother who's lost a child, every parent who understands the sacredness of grief, every woman who's watched someone's priorities warp under the spell of a new romance. They all felt this contrast like a punch to the chest. Comment sections across platforms became a chorus of heartbreak and outrage. Here's the thing about narcissistic prioritization in family life. It's not rare. When someone repeatedly puts their romantic relationship above their children's emotional needs, especially during times of crisis or loss, it says something deep about their ability to lead a family in a healthy way. This isn't just about decorating choices. It's about what's honored, what's hidden, and the message those choices send to the people left behind. Think about the impact on Garrison's siblings. Imagine walking into your father's home and seeing an expensive romantic tribute front and center, while your late brother's memory is literally out of sight. What does that say about whose feelings matter, whose relationships take priority, and how grief is expected to be handled in that family? The timeline makes it even harder to swallow. While Kody was planning surprise anniversary reveals and commissioning costly artwork to celebrate his romance, his family was living through one of the worst losses imaginable. The months Crystal spent creating this legacy painting were months when that same energy, attention, and money could have gone toward honoring his son's life and supporting his grieving family. Social media lit up with mothers sharing their own stories. One comment, shared over 1,000 times, read, "If my husband spent $5,000 on romantic art while our child's photo sat in the garage, that would be the end of everything." But as it turns out, this wasn't just about one bad decision. The pattern ran deeper than anyone first realized. Which brings us to the backstory of this controversial piece. The details Crystal Brown shared about creating it reveal just how elaborate and expensive this romantic gesture really was. Crystal's website reads like a love letter to her craft, and to be fair, her talent is undeniable. But the way she describes bringing Love Psalm to life adds layers to this scandal that make it even more jaw-dropping. This wasn't a quick weekend project. It wasn't a casual commission. This painting consumed months of her professional life. Kody gave her the reference photo, that infamous white Lexus engagement shot, and complete creative freedom to turn it into what she calls a legacy painting. That level of trust and financial commitment is no small thing, and here's where it gets even more telling. Crystal says that while she worked on the massive canvas, she played the music from Kody and Robyn's courtship in her studio. Think about that. For months, the soundtrack of their romance filled the room while she painted, all while the rest of the Brown family was dealing with real-life grief and loss. The scale of the piece is staggering. A 36 by 72-inch oil painting on linen. That's 3 feet by 6 feet, bigger than most dining tables. This isn't a keepsake you tuck on a shelf. It's a statement piece meant to dominate any room it's in. Crystal even describes the reveal like a scene from a romance film. Kody brought Robyn to the studio under the guise of picking an anniversary gift, walked her through what Crystal calls a nerve-wracking little art show of other works, and then led her to the studio door where the massive surprise was waiting. She left them alone to take it in, saying she felt the ancestors and a sense of sacredness throughout the project. And then there's the money. Based on Crystal's listed prices for other works, online investigators estimate Kody paid somewhere around $5,000 for this painting. That's not pocket change. That's a family vacation, a year's worth of car payments, or a serious boost to an emergency fund. For context, Crystal's other large works typically sell for between $1,500 and $3,500. But this was her biggest and priciest piece yet. When you factor in the months of work, the specialized materials, and the fully custom nature of the commission, the premium price makes perfect sense from a business standpoint. Crystal earned every cent she charged. The problem isn't her fee. The problem is Kody's priorities. Because this wasn't just a financial investment, it was months of planning, emotional energy, and romantic focus, all while his family was dealing with grief, financial strain, and the fallout from their plural marriage breaking apart. The time, money, and attention poured into celebrating his relationship with Robyn could have been spent supporting his children through an unimaginable loss. And then there's the most telling detail of all. Crystal described this as a legacy painting. Legacies are about what we choose to preserve, honor, and pass down. Kody's choice of legacy is becoming painfully clear. What happened next was like watching a wildfire rip through social media. And when the national sisterhood locks onto something this deeply wrong, there's no stopping it. The side-by-side images started popping up everywhere. Facebook groups dedicated to sister wives lit up with activity, members posting screenshots, swapping theories, and sharing raw emotional reactions. Reddit threads ran into the hundreds of comments. Instagram stories paired the comparison with captions that made you want to cry and scream at the same time. TikTok creators broke down the cost of the painting versus the neglect of the memorial, and their videos racked up millions of views. But this wasn't just idle gossip or reality TV chatter. It struck a nerve that runs through countless households, where selfishness warps priorities, where children's needs are pushed aside for adult romance, where grief is mishandled by people who should know better. The comment sections became a chorus of shared pain. Every woman who's ever watched a step-parent put their new relationship ahead of existing children saw this and felt sick. One viewer's post, shared over 3,000 times, read, "As someone who lost my brother young, if my father did this, I would never speak to him again." Period mothers who had lost children began sharing how they honored their kids' memories, photo collages in living rooms, scholarship funds in their names, memorial benches and family gathering spots. The contrast between how loving parents handle grief and what we're seeing here was impossible to ignore. Women started connecting the dots beyond just this painting. This is the same man who missed graduations but never missed a romantic getaway, one longtime viewer pointed out. The same father who forgot birthdays but could plan elaborate anniversary surprises. The painting became a symbol, a visual representation of years of misplaced priorities finally laid bare. Facebook groups for mothers who'd endured family trauma filled with solidarity posts. One group admin wrote, "Every woman who's ever had to watch her children's father put his new wife above his kids knows exactly what this painting represents. Her post drew over 500 supportive reactions in hours. Quilting circles, book clubs, coffee shop conversations, all turned to the same topic. Women who had never even watched Sister Wives were being shown the comparison images by friends, and their reactions were universally horrified. This had crossed over from reality TV drama into a conversation about basic human decency, about how we honor our children versus how we celebrate our romances. Group chats buzzed with screenshots of the painting and messages like, "Please tell me you're seeing this," and "I cannot believe someone would actually do this." The story was spreading far beyond the show's usual audience because it touched on something universal. Twitter threads analyzing the psychology behind the choice gained thousands of retweets. Mental health professionals weighed in on the potential damage to surviving children. Grief counselors shared insights on healthy versus harmful ways to process loss in a family. And when you step back, it's clear this painting isn't an isolated incident. It's the latest chapter in a long-running pattern that women with life experience can spot instantly. Family therapists and relationship experts who followed the Browns for years pointed out behaviors many of us have seen in our own circles. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a family systems specialist, put it bluntly. When a parent consistently prioritizes romantic display over their children's emotional needs, especially during grief, it's a textbook case of hierarchy dysfunction. The children learn exactly where they rank in the family, and it's not at the top. So let's walk through the red flags, because these patterns show up everywhere, and recognizing them can be empowering. First, the performative nature of the gesture. This isn't a small private token between spouses. It's a massive, expensive display placed for maximum visibility, even on national television. When someone needs their romantic gestures to be seen and admired by others, it often says more about image management than genuine intimacy. Second, the financial priorities. Spending $5,000 on art celebrating a romance while a deceased child's memorial sits in a garage signals a value system that would alarm any grief counselor. Healthy parents in mourning usually want to honor their lost children in visible, meaningful ways, says Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in family grief counseling. They create photo displays, memorial gardens, scholarships, tangible ways to keep their child's memory central to family life. Third, the timing. And that's where things get even more revealing. The months Kody spent planning and commissioning this grand romantic tribute happened during one of the darkest chapters his family has ever faced. The emotional energy, the money, the focus, all of it went into celebrating his relationship with Robyn, when it could have been directed toward helping his surviving children navigate their grief. And for longtime viewers, this wasn't a one-off lapse in judgment. It fit a pattern they'd been watching for years. Remember when Kody skipped Gabriel's graduation, but never missed a romantic getaway with Robyn? Or when he couldn't recall his kids' important milestones, yet somehow managed to plan elaborate anniversary surprises? This painting is simply the most expensive, most visible example of a dynamic that's been playing out for a long time. Women who've lived through blended family situations recognized it instantly. One viral comment put it plainly. "I watched my father do this exact same thing. The new wife's needs always came first. Her comfort, her happiness, her celebrations. Meanwhile, us kids learned to make ourselves small and never ask for too much." Experts have a name for this. When adults consistently put their romantic relationship ahead of their children's emotional needs, it often comes from emotional immaturity, the need to seek validation and identity through romance instead of finding fulfillment in healthy parenting. In that dynamic, the children become supporting characters in their own family story. What makes this case especially painful is how public it is. Garrison's siblings now have to watch their father's priorities play out on national television, their brother's memory literally pushed to the margins while romantic celebration takes center stage. The message those actions send is one no child should ever have to hear. Some of the most powerful reactions came from adults who had lived through the same thing. They shared stories of feeling invisible, while a parent's new relationship soaked up all the attention and resources. Those personal accounts became the heartbreaking backdrop to this very public example of the same dynamic. By this point, the internet had reached its boiling point. Calls for accountability were everywhere, and then the story shifted from private family dysfunction to a public spectacle that made people question basic human decency. Because it's one thing to commission an expensive romantic painting and hang it in your own home. It's another to feature it prominently on a television show watched by millions, especially when your family is still reeling from devastating loss. Think about the decisions that had to be made for that to happen. TLC producers and camera crews came into McMansion 2.0 to film season 20. They set up shots, adjusted lighting, chose angles, all to tell a particular story. Somewhere in those discussions, whether it was Kody, the production team, or both, a choice was made. This massive romantic oil painting would be front and center in multiple scenes. That wasn't an accident. Television is intentional. Every item in the frame is either deliberately included or consciously ignored. The fact that this painting appears so prominently in the season 20 trailer means it was chosen as part of the visual narrative they wanted to present to America. Meanwhile, Garrison's memorial photo sits tucked away where viewers will never see it. Kody's $5,000 romantic tribute, on the other hand, gets primetime exposure. The message couldn't be clearer. This is what matters most in the Brown family hierarchy. The audacity left people stunned. Parents who've lost children describe feeling like they'd been slapped. One viewer's comment, "The fact that he's literally putting his romantic obsession on display for the world while his son's memory hides in the garage makes me physically sick," drew over 2,000 likes. And here's the part that makes it even harder to stomach. Kody knows millions of people are aware of Garrison's death. He knows the Sister Wives audience has been following the family's grief. He knows viewers are watching to see how they're honoring Garrison's memory. And his choice was to showcase a massive romantic painting of himself and Robyn while keeping his son's memorial out of sight. The psychological impact on his surviving children is impossible to ignore. Imagine being one of Garrison's siblings and watching your father broadcast his priorities to the world in such a visual, undeniable way. Your brother's death becomes a footnote, while your father's romance gets the spotlight. Social media erupted after the trailer dropped. One viral tweet read, "He really said, 'Let me make sure America knows what's most important to me,' and chose the romantic painting over his dead son's photo. It was shared over 5,000 times. Another viewer wrote, "The secondhand embarrassment I feel for his children is overwhelming." The contrast with how other reality TV families handle loss was striking. When tragedy hits public figures, we usually see them honoring their loved ones openly, creating visible tributes, making their memory part of the family's public story. The deliberate choice to do the opposite here speaks volumes about Kody's decision-making. At this point, it's not about interior design. It's about a man using national television to show exactly where his heart, mind, and money are, regardless of how it affects his grieving children or his public image. What we're seeing goes far beyond one family's dysfunction playing out on TV. It's become a cultural flashpoint, a conversation about grief, family priorities, and what happens when emotional immaturity is put on the biggest possible stage. The Sister Wives community has, in many ways, turned into a grief support network. Viewers are sharing their own stories of losing children, navigating blended families, and watching parents make choices that left lasting scars on the kids who remained. The painting has taken on a life of its own, a symbol of every moment a parent has chosen romance over responsibility, celebration over remembrance, image over integrity. Family trauma specialists say this is a textbook case of what's known as complicated grief dynamics. Dr. Rebecca Torres, who works with families navigating loss, explained it in a way that made the whole picture click into place. When a family system is already unstable because of relationship changes, the arrival of grief exposes the real hierarchy of emotional priorities. Children watch how their loss is handled and absorb unspoken messages about their worth within the family. For the surviving Brown children, the implications are staggering. Child psychologists who've been following the family's public journey are openly concerned about the long-term emotional fallout of seeing their father's priorities play out so visibly. Children who lose a sibling need to feel that their family is honoring that loss together, says Dr. Michael Chen, a specialist in childhood grief. When they see romantic relationships being celebrated while their sibling's memory is sidelined, it can create deep trust issues and long-term attachment problems. And there's another layer here, one that's especially unsettling. The Sister Wives audience has essentially become witness to a form of psychological manipulation that plays out in families across the country every day. The difference is that most families don't have their dysfunction broadcast to millions, which makes this a rare and painful opportunity for pattern recognition and education. Women who've lived through similar family dynamics are using this moment to process their own trauma. One viewer wrote, "Watching this helped me understand why I felt so invisible in my own family." Her comment sparked a thread with hundreds of responses. Another shared, "My stepfather did the same thing. Every dollar, every celebration, every bit of attention went to his new relationship, while us kids learned to fade into the background." The financial side of this story continues to fuel outrage among viewers who understand household budgets and resource allocation. $5,000 could have established a scholarship fund in Garrison's name, one person pointed out. It could have created a memorial garden, paid for grief counseling for his siblings, or supported causes he cared about. Instead, it went towards celebrating a romance that's already caused deep fractures in the family. Support groups for parents who've lost children are now discussing this case as a clear example of what not to do in the grieving process. The consensus is unanimous. Healthy grieving parents find ways to keep their lost child's presence alive in daily family life, not hidden away in storage areas. While romantic relationships, if they exist, take a respectful back seat. The ripple effects have spread far beyond the Sister Wives fan base. Grief counselors say clients are bringing up this situation in therapy sessions, using it as a framework to talk about their own family dynamics and healing. It's become a reference point for what healthy versus unhealthy family priorities look like during a crisis, notes Dr. Amanda Rivera, who works with families in trauma recovery. Perhaps the most bittersweet outcome is how this controversy has created a kind of healing community among viewers. In comment sections, people are sharing their own stories of feeling invisible, of watching parents put new relationships ahead of existing children, of growing up in family systems where love felt conditional and priorities seemed upside down. The painting is no longer just an expensive piece of wall art. It's a mirror reflecting dysfunction that exists in countless homes, now impossible to ignore under the harsh glare of national television. What's unfolding here goes far beyond one family's drama playing out on TV. It's become a cultural touchstone, a conversation about grief, family priorities, and the damage caused when emotional immaturity is put on the biggest possible stage. The Sister Wives community has, in many ways, transformed into a grief support group. Viewers are sharing stories of losing children, navigating blended families, and watching parents make choices that left their surviving kids devastated. And through it all, the painting remains, a visual reminder of every time a parent has chosen romance over responsibility, celebration over commemoration, image over integrity. Instead of honoring a son's memory, that money went toward celebrating a romantic relationship that's already left deep cracks in the family. Support groups for parents who've lost children are now pointing to this as a textbook example of what not to do in the grieving process. The consensus is unanimous. Healthy grieving parents find ways to keep their lost child's presence alive in daily family life, not hidden away in storage, while romantic relationships take a respectful backseat, and the ripple effects are reaching far beyond the Sister Wives fan base. Grief counselors say clients are bringing up this situation in therapy, using it as a way to unpack their own family histories and healing journeys. It's become a reference point for what healthy versus unhealthy family priorities look like during a crisis, says Dr. Amanda Rivera, who works with families in trauma recovery. Perhaps the most bittersweet part is how this controversy has created a kind of healing community among viewers. In comment sections, people are sharing their own stories of feeling invisible, of watching parents put new relationships ahead of existing children, of growing up in homes where love felt conditional and priorities were upside down. The painting is no longer just an expensive piece of wall art. It's a mirror, reflecting dysfunction that exists in families everywhere, now impossible to ignore under the harsh glare of national television. So here we are, coffee cups empty, hearts heavy, having witnessed what might be one of the most tone-deaf displays of misplaced priorities in reality TV history. And this story is far from over. The aftershocks will be felt for months, maybe years. Family relationship experts aren't sugarcoating their predictions. Dr. Jennifer Rodriguez, who specializes in family systems recovery, warns that this could cause lasting fractures in the Brown family. When children watch a parent publicly prioritize a romantic display over their deceased sibling's memory, it often becomes a defining moment in that relationship, she says. Some bonds never recover from this level of misalignment, especially when it's broadcast to the world. And then there's the silence. Despite thousands of comments, viral hashtags, and mainstream media coverage, Kody and Robyn have said nothing about the glaring contrast between the $5,000 romantic painting and the placement of Garrison's memorial. That silence has become its own statement. Either they don't grasp the gravity of what they've done, or they simply don't care about the public's reaction. While the Browns remain quiet, the Sister Wives community has found its voice. Memorial funds have been set up in Garrison's honor by viewers determined to show what true remembrance looks like. Social media groups are posting photos of their own family memorials, creating a stark, painful contrast to what's on display in Kody's home. In many ways, the community is showing the Browns, and the world, what genuine honor and love for a lost child should look like. TLC's next move will be telling. The network has built its brand on exploring family dynamics, but giving airtime to behavior that many see as cruel toward a deceased child puts them in a delicate position. Industry insiders say they're watching the backlash closely and may have to address it directly if it keeps growing. Child psychology experts are especially worried about the long-term impact on the remaining Brown children. When kids see a parent publicly marginalize their deceased sibling, they often develop what we call conditional attachment, explains Dr. Sarah Chen. They learn that love and attention in their family depends on not challenging the adult's romantic relationship. That kind of conditioning can follow them into adulthood, shaping how they trust, or don't trust, future relationships. Looking ahead, the season 20 episodes featuring that painting will be must-watch TV for all the wrong reasons. Every time it appears on screen, it will be a visual reminder of this imbalance. Viewers already know it's going to be emotionally difficult to watch, knowing the backstory of what's hanging on the wall versus what's hidden in the garage, and this conversation isn't going away. Grief counselors say clients are still bringing it up in sessions. Support groups for bereaved parents are still using it as an example of how not to navigate loss. The painting has become a cautionary tale that extends far beyond reality television. If there's any light in this, it's the way the community has rallied to honor Garrison, through scholarships, memorial donations, and thousands of heartfelt comments celebrating his life and service. It's a reminder that sometimes the family we choose in community can give the honor and recognition that biological family fails to provide. The question now is whether this will be the wake-up call that forces Kody to reevaluate his priorities, or just another controversy he weathers while continuing the same patterns. Based on history and the current silence, many longtime viewers aren't holding their breath for real change. But one thing is certain. This moment has crystallized something important for everyone watching. We've seen what happens when priorities get so twisted that romantic celebration takes precedence over honoring a child. And the community has responded with a loud, unified rejection of that value system. So, will this be the moment of accountability, or will the cycle continue? Either way, the fallout is just beginning. And if you think this was jaw-dropping, stay tuned. because the next round of Brown family revelations might make this romantic art scandal look tame.